Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of If You Smell What the Arch is Cooking. I am your host, Archie Mitchell, and it is time for me once again to spew my venom, my hate, and my love for the world of professional wrestling. And I have to tell you guys something. There may be some hate this week, but there is certainly a lot of love because the fans are back in the arena. The WWE and Impact Wrestling put on two hell of a pay-per-views on Saturday and Sunday night, and that's why we're here this week. We're going to be covering Impact Slammiversary from this past Saturday night and WWE's Money in the Bank pay-per-view from this past Sunday night. I just want to say that seeing fans back in the arena for Impact, AEW, WWE, apparently the NWA will start bringing fans in as well. It has been phenomenal. It has been almost like a rebirth for wrestling, in my opinion, because hearing those fans chant, hearing the "this is awesome," "holy shit," "oh my god" chants, "you still got it," it goes on and on and on, has been making these shows better. The fans are 50% of what goes on in the wrestling business. Without them, it's just the wrestling. And these wrestlers do a great job without the fans, but with them, they do an immaculate job, an incredible job. And I'm happy that the fans of the WWE Universe, Impact, AEW, and every other wrestling promotion are back because it means that things are finally back to normal in this world that we live in. Hallelujah. So we're going to go ahead and start off with some quick hits this week. And our first quick hit is Mickie James announced Empower during an episode of NWA television, NWA Power. Mickie James has announced the all-women's pay-per-view and then went on in an interview to say that the WWE women's pay-per-view, Evolution, was set up to fail. Now, I forgot to crack open my frosty beverage, so I suggest you do the same, and let's dive into this. I almost want to entitle this episode the one where I rip Mickie James a new asshole, because she's all over this show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, Mickie James, I understand you were unceremoniously fired from the WWE. You went to the NWA. But you went to the NWA because your husband has been the world heavyweight champion there for now 1,000 days. And you knew he'd use his pull and his stroke to get you a position. The only problem is the position that he got you is that of an authority figure now for the Empower pay-per-view and the women's division there. And it just seems to me that you're going to use all of this in order to bury the WWE. The Evolution pay-per-view, the all-women's pay-per-view that the WWE put on, was incredible. They had great matches. They had great women on the card. They brought back Trish Stratus and Lita. And I had no problem with it. And the fans in attendance were cheering galore. Not only that, it was very well bought on paper. WWE Network saw a surge in, people subscribing, and pay-per-view buy rate was up for it too for people who still bought pay-per-view back then. It was not set up to fail. Just because the WWE hasn't done another one doesn't mean it was set up to fail. The reason they haven't done another one is because women have been main eventing the regular pay-per-views. There is no reason to have a women's-only pay-per-view when the women are being included in every pay-per-view, such as WrestleMania, the Royal Rumble, and so on. So, Mickie James, as great as it may seem for you to do an all-women's pay-per-view, it seems to me you're pushing it. And we'll get to a little more of that later. Our second quick hit of the day, I already touched upon a bit. WWE finally got back in front of a live crowd this week. Wrestling is back to normal. It started off with Friday Night SmackDown, which was a great show. And then it went to this Sunday with Money in the Bank. The fans were chanting. They were on their feet. They were screaming. My buddy David Gold said that it seemed like they were chanting and screaming more for the heels. I agree, but they did boo Roman Reigns, and they did pop for the return of a certain Doctor of Dugonomics, which we'll get into in just a bit. Um, but it was definitely great to see the fans back. I'm very happy about that. And third and final of our quick hits, Goldberg returning to possibly challenge Lashley for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam. Now, this is only a rumor, and it's supposedly to be taking place on Monday Night Raw. I'm recording this on Monday night at 10 p.m. I have not watched Raw yet. So by the time this airs, we'll know if Goldberg is back or not. What I'd like to say is I don't like this one bit. It's not because Goldberg's a part-timer. Goldberg is past his prime. Goldberg has already challenged Drew McIntyre for the World Heavyweight title after Drew became the World Heavyweight Champion just a couple of months ago in the Thunderdome. He was the World Heavyweight Champion when he beat The Fiend a little over a year ago. And then he lost to Braun Strowman in the main event of WrestleMania. Or I forgot, was it? I think it was WrestleMania. So what I'm saying is there's no reason to bring back Goldberg. He's not going to get the pop that you think he's going to, Vince. He's going to get booed out of the arena again. There is no reason for Goldberg to be back and challenging for a major World Heavyweight Championship. So that's going to do it for our quick hits. We're going to go into our first review, Impact Slammiversary, with the highs and the lows. And here we go with the highs. DK, Rosemary, and Havoc taking on Fire and Flavor for the Impact Knockouts Tag Team Championship. Was a good opener. Glad we got new Knockout Tag Team Champions in DK. Rosemary and Havoc work great together. And Fire and Flavor are not a bad tag team, but I think they're being pushed a little too fast for someone who is as green as they are. But they are starting to get some seasoning behind them, so more power to them. Great opener, though. We then had the X Division Ultimate X match between Trey Miguel, Ace Austin, Petey Williams, Chris Bay, Raiju, and Josh Alexander. The X Division always shines, especially when it's in the Ultimate X match. That ankle lock by Josh Alexander from the top of the Ultimate X was unbelievable. If you didn't get a chance to see it, find even still pictures of it. It's crazy to look at. These guys put their bodies on the line. Josh Alexander walks out and still your X Division champion. Great matchup. We then got Brian Myers and Tennille Dashwood taking on Matt Cardona and a mystery tag team partner. And I didn't expect it to be Chelsea Green. As I said on last week's show, I thought Chelsea would stay in Ring of Honor, get healed up, and then maybe come to Impact. But it was still great to see her in her hot mess gimmick. Her and Zack actually did a great job. I'm not a big Zack Ryder fan. Matt Cardona, Zack Ryder, whatever you want to call him. But he and Chelsea did an incredible job. It was just a quick match. They maybe stayed out there for 9 or 10 minutes, but she looked great, and the match was good. Cardona and Chelsea pick up the win, and I'm happy to see that she's getting the exposure that she deserves. We then get W. Morrissey taking on Eddie Edwards, and the former Big Cass is a monster, and I'm glad that Impact is finally using him as they should be. He and Eddie tore the house down in a brutal match. Morrissey gets the win. And then we get hype for the Drama King. Now, I don't know if this is Aiden English or not, the former Aiden English in WWE, but if it is, I can't wait. That guy was very underrated in WWE, and he deserves a push in another company. We then get Moose and Chris Sabin. Perfect David and Goliath match. This is how you book that kind of match, because Moose did all he could to pound on Chris Sabin. Sabin came back when he needed to, pushed as much as he could. Moose brought him back down again, and then I was shocked to see Sabin pick up the win. 20-minute match that was great, and Sabin actually gets a roll-up victory over a former world champion. Great job for Chris Sabin. Then we get a four-way dance between the Good Brothers, Rich Swann, and Willie Mack. Violent by Design, and followed on his mystery partner. And his mystery partner was No Way Jose. Uh, Match was okay. Definitely had its moments. Glad that Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson got the win and get the belts back. Great for them. Great for the continued storyline with the Elite and having all the gold. It was a good tag team match. I won't say that it was anything other than a good tag team match. We then go to the women's knockouts champion, Deonna Purrazzo and her mystery opponent, and it's Thunder Rosa, and she's definitely making the rounds in every company that she can. She's been in Ring of Honor, she's been in Impact now, she's in AEW, she was in NWA. Good on her. She's making the rounds. She's a journeyman's wrestler. She does great work. And really, it was a good match. Both women pulling off some hard-hitting moves. Great to see what went on. Deonna picks up the win after about 17 minutes. So Thunder Rosa just can't seem to catch a break when it comes to going after a title lately. But it was still a really good match. And then we got a quick tag. We'll actually get to that in the lows. I forgot about that. Excuse me. We then go to the World Heavyweight title match. Kenny Omega defending against Sami Callihan. And this was not the match I was expecting. But I'm happy with all that went down because it was a brutal, hardcore masterpiece. When it needed to be, and it delivered on all accounts, in my opinion. That one-winged angel on the tax was cringe, but in a good way. Sami Callihan is a great talent, in my opinion. He deserves better. He should be a world heavyweight champion, but as long as he's chasing it and they're not throwing him to the backside, no big deal. And then after the match, King Switch, Jay White, Switchblade, the leader of the Bullet Club in Japan, makes his debut and leaves us with so many questions. Wrestling is back in a big way, and Impact proves that the door is open to any and every company with this pay-per-view. Now we move on to the lows. Mickie James making her return and taking away Deonna Purrazzo's moment. Mickie came out to offer Deonna a spot in the Empower pay-per-view and in the tournament. This could have been done on Impact. It did not have to be done after Deonna Purrazzo had a great matchup with Thunder Rosa. In my opinion, Mickie James is beginning to give off a fabulous Moolah vibe. What I mean by that is she's past her prime. It's time for her to go away, but she refuses to. And that's kind of sad, Mickie. The other low, and this is the only other low, FinJuice makes their return, and they get put into a match with Sawyer Fulton and Mahabali Shera. They could have reintroduced FinJuice any other way, but instead they did it in a throwaway match with two guys that they've been building as monsters for weeks. I didn't like it. Fulton and Shera are both over 6 feet tall, both over 300 pounds, and FinJuice, who are at about 210 apiece and maybe 5'8", get the win. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. It shouldn't have happened that way. Those were the only two lows, though. Impact Slammiversary, incredible, incredible night for Impact Wrestling. And now we move on to WWE's Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Here are the highs. We had the Usos taking on the Mysterios. This was a great opener and should have been on the main show, not the pre-show. I honestly couldn't believe the Usos won, but more on that later. Women's Money in the Bank match. Every woman in the match looked great, and the fans were on their feet the entire match. Bliss, Vega, and Morgan, and Nikki were the stars of this match for me, and Nikki winning was quite a shock. I could have seen Zelina Vega winning it. I could have even seen Liv Morgan as an underdog getting the win, but I guess they're behind this Nikki Ash storyline that she's a almost superhero, and they're pushing her to the moon. No worries. Keep it going. We then go to Lashley versus Kingston for the WWE World Heavyweight title. This was perfect. It established Bobby Lashley as a dominant champion and put an exclamation point on it. Kofi was great when he was a champion, but his time has passed, and the Almighty's time is now. This is not done in disrespect to Kofi, but Bobby needed to squash somebody, and unfortunately it was Kofi Kingston. No big deal. We then go to Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley for the Women's Championship over on Monday Night Raw. And it was a very good, hard-hitting match. Both women read each other perfectly. It was almost a perfect chess game. But neither could get the upper hand. Charlotte had to snap and get dirtier than her father ever has, squashing Rhea's leg in the steps and applying the figure eight to get the win. And you know what? Sometimes you got to snap and get the upper hand. It was great, in my opinion. I know we say Charlotte gets crammed down our throats sometimes. I agree with it as well. But if this storyline is going to continue and Rhea eventually gets to get a shot at winning, no big deal. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. From there, we go to the men's Money in the Bank match. And the men's match was a spot fest, but not in a bad way. Owens showed just how hardcore he is willing to go. Rollins followed suit, and McIntyre was booked strong. Ricochet, Morrison, and Owens were the stars of this match for me, and good for Big E finally getting a shot at being at the next level. He gets the win in the Money in the Bank matchup, and I kind of hope that he cashes in on Lashley. I'd like to see what those two could do in the ring, but you never know with WWE these days. And then we go to our main event. Roman Reigns versus Edge, the Rated R superstar, proving that he still got it and giving Roman a run for his money. The crowd was into every minute of this match, and that was great to see because you don't get that much often when you've had such a great pay-per-view going. They're kind of out of air, but they were still pushing forward. Good, solid ending with a lot of questions to be answered this coming week on Raw and SmackDown. And why was that? Well, because John Cena returned and got face-to-face with Roman Reigns. I may not be a John Cena fan, but it was great to see him, and that pop he got was absolutely awesome. As for the lows on the Money in the Bank side of things, AJ Styles and Omos versus the Viking Raiders. The Raw Tag Division is kind of dead, and this match proved it. Slowed way down after just 3 minutes and just lagged and didn't really go anywhere. Styles looked out of place and needs a better team to defend those belts against. Just please, not the New Day. And then Charlotte Flair winning the women's title again was a little bit of a low. I know she's one of the best, and I think she's great. But this is just too much too soon. And, every time a new superstar gets a good title run, there's Charlotte to take the title. Ripley should have been made to look as strong as possible. And I can't echo that enough. But if this is still going to be Charlotte versus Ripley, and we get the payoff with Ripley finally beating Charlotte, then okay, I'm there for it. And the final low, only 3 on the MITB side. Jinder Mahal interfering in Drew's Money in the Bank match. I get it, furthers the feud that they've been building, but this could have been done on Raw, not on a pay-per-view. I understand. Progress things, make Jinder look like a badass, get Drew away from the title. It just didn't come off that way. It came off as forced, and I hated it. I really, really hated it. But Money in the Bank was a good pay-per-view as well. If you didn't get a chance to see it yet, go out of your way to see that and Slammiversary, because both are worth your time. And now it is on to Nate Maxon's favorite part of the show, and I'm assuming some of yours as well. This is what grinds my gears. And I remember what I said the name of this show would be entitled if I had to give a title to every one of my episodes. The one where I rip Mickie James a new asshole. Mickie James was great in the Attitude Era. She was even great in the early 2000s. There is no denying that she is one of the best women's wrestlers we have ever seen. But after she left the WWE the first time, because of the whole Piggy James angle and all the things they did to push her out. She went to Impact and she reinvented herself. She had a great career. WWE chose to bring her back to fight Asuka in NXT and then brought her back to the main roster. During that time, she never won another women's title, but she was in a couple of title matches. What I'm getting to here is Mickie had a decorated career. And when they needed somebody to put a champion over in her later days, they used her perfectly. But after the WWE fired her, she began cutting these shoot promos and these BS things about how she was coming up with these great ideas to do another all-women's pay-per-view and that she should be the promoter for it, the one that writes it, and she should have a high-profile match there. And the WWE told her no, and that's why she thinks she was fired. That's why she thinks she was given a garbage bag of her stuff. Mind you, the man who did that to her lost his job because she felt that she should post that on Twitter and Instagram and make fun of the fact that they threw her entire life in a garbage bag. Furthermore, as I said earlier, she went to her husband in the NWA knowing that Nick Aldis is the NWA World Heavyweight Champion and he'd get her what she wanted, which is an all-women's pay-per-view. Well, Mickie, your idea to do another all-women's pay-per-view is great, but you're acting like you had the idea before women's wrestling boomed, okay? The women's revolution has been going on now for 10 years. The women's revolution had its pay-per-view. It was great. Fans loved it. No one complained about it. No one shit on it. Just because you were not in a main event or an entitled picture at that time doesn't mean that it was a bad pay-per-view and it was set up to fail. No, what it means is, Mickie, is that you were not at the level they wanted you at or you wanted to be at, and they didn't put you in a bigger match. What this also means, Mickie, is that you are bitter and you have sour grapes for anything else going on in wrestling that doesn't involve you. What it also means, Mickie, is that you're using your husband's championship to get you a position of power in the NWA, knowing that the NWA is doing business with AEW and Impact Wrestling, as well as New Japan. So you'll figure you'll be on every one of those shows to go and try to get talent from them to put into your all-women's pay-per-view tournament. And then the bigger payoff, see, this is what no one seems to be realizing is the undertone of it all. If you watched Impact Slammiversary, or even if you didn't and you just read the spoilers, Mickie super kicked Deonna Purrazzo, thus setting her up for a match with Deonna Purrazzo at this Empower pay-per-view, which basically gives her a shot at the Impact Women's title without having a match in Impact or having a match in the last few months. And what it also does is means that Mickie will be in a prominent role at the pay-per-view and allows her to live out this now dream that she's a promoter and that she is helping women's wrestling. And again, I will echo what I said earlier. Mickie James is giving off a Fabulous Moolah type vibe. Fabulous Moolah in her 50s and 60s refused to leave the wrestling world. She still wanted to be the women's champion, and she held wrestlers like Wendy Richter and a bunch of other women underneath her while she was still the champion. And then when she came back during the Attitude Era with Mae Young, they were still trying to be in the spotlight, and all WWE wanted them to do was be comedy. So this is what Mickie James is doing lately. She is trying to be the Fabulous Moolah. Trish Stratus retired with grace, and when the WWE needs her to come back, she comes back with a smile, does her job, and leaves with grace again. Lita retired with grace and does exactly like Trish does. Leaves when needs be, comes back when needs be, and nothing else in between. And when they ask her to promote something, she's there. Molly Holly, Jacqueline, Ivory, Victoria, Candice Michelle, Tori Wilson, Stacy Keibler, all of the women who were on the WWE women's roster when Mickie James was there are all retired. Candice Michelle, Layla, Leia, whoever Candice Michelle's tag team partner was, Layla, are gone as well. All of the women who were wrestling when Mickie James came into the WWE during the Attitude Era and after it are retired. All of the women who were there before Mickie are retired. And none of them are barking or saying anything bad about the WWE, holding them down or not giving them the pat on the back or allowing them to do what they wanted. It's only Mickie James that's doing this. And she keeps saying things like she's going to bring the best talent from around the world to be at the Empower show. Well, the best talent is wrestling in AEW, New Japan, Ring of Honor, and WWE. And from what I've seen, the first couple of women that she's announced, that's not the best talent. One of them has never had a wrestling match before. So, Mickie, you're grasping at straws here. And if this pay-per-view fails and doesn't get a good buy rate, then what? Who do you blame then? Do you say that the WWE did something to finagle a way for you to fail? Do you blame the NWA? Do you blame AEW or Impact? Who do you blame then, Mickie? You're 41 years old, and this is not about your age, but you should have retired with grace and went on to do a podcast and make appearances like everyone else does. But I'll tell you what the real problem is here, folks. A lot of these wrestlers, like Mickie James and Goldberg, had children in their later days. Their kids are 4 years old, 8 years old. In Goldberg's case now, I think his son is a teenager. And they all have that same excuse when they come back. I just want my kid to see me wrestle. My kid never got a chance to see me wrestle live. Well, guess what? Your kid got a chance to see you wrestle now. There's dozens of DVDs, videotapes. The Peacock app has all the WWE stuff on it. Impact has a video library. AEW will soon have a video library. Sit your kids down and let them watch during your heyday, when Goldberg was unstoppable, when Mickie James was one of the best things going. Don't make them see you now when you botch, when you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, when you hurt people, when you injure yourself. It's time to say goodbye and let the new generation take over, because you had your time. You had your success. What more do you want? So that's going to do it for us this week. I want to thank you guys, as always, for joining me here on WrestleNet Radio. I want to thank you for your support for WrestleNet Radio, the We Can't Wrestle podcast. If you smell what the Arch is cooking, a slice in time, the year that was, reliving the extreme. Any show that you listen to on here is greatly appreciative of your continued support. So, with that being said, thank you for joining me. I will see you again next week, back with the NXT and AEW reviews. And as always, I'll see you next time. If you smell what the Arch is cooking.